Characters. And for that, they brought on a team of two guys, and we've got one of them here for you right now, Jimmy Palmiotti. Did you guys like the story in this game? Did you like all those amazing cinematics? Here we have Dominic Cianciolo, our cinematic director and one of the story writers. Next up, if you like the style of this game, you like the way that everything looks, you're going to thank this guy, Steve Barron, director of art. And finally, somebody has to wrangle all of these people and keep them on task, and that was Mr. Hector Sanchez, our producer. All right, guys, let's start off right away with the story, because this is what everybody is talking about. You guys actually made a fighting game that has an actual story to it. Why don't we talk a little bit about that process? Dominic, if you can talk about the process of getting the story written, and then how you guys brought Jimmy and Justin.
Yeah, sure. Early on, when Ed had set up what he wanted for the game, he wanted us to deliver a summer blockbuster in a video game. So as we were coming up with pitches, we had to come up with something that was suitably huge and make you feel like you were in this big summer action movie. And as we had various pitches, we showed them to Ed to see what he was going for, what he liked, and he sparked immediately to the alternate universe pitch that we ended up doing. So once we got there, we worked with our internal team. We have John Greenberg, Brian Chard, John Vogel, who helped put that together. And then once we had a basic treatment, we then showed it to Jimmy and Justin and the folks at DC and started getting feedback on it. And every stage along the way, as we went from just a one-page document, what the script would be, to a longer outline, to a full script. At each point along that way, we got notes to make sure that we were staying true to the characters and also getting some really solid writing suggestions as well.
Yeah, we had no problem because we worked together on, I don't know if you guys played the Mortal Kombat versus DCU game. And the crew, the writers already, they were familiar with everything, and you know, Justin and I got the story and we loved it right away. We thought it was awesome, and you know, we were hired to look over, consult, and it was an easy job because these guys nailed it. It was just wonderful, and you know, we had little suggestions here and there, but overall, out of the gate, it was a killer story, and by the time it was done, it even got even better. You guys started building it up, and it really was an easy job for us because we were dealing with such talented guys, so it was a great time. And obviously, anybody play the game yet? So you guys know how crazy it is, and again, like for us, it was awesome to see the characters that we put on in the two-dimensional platform, and to see them be able to be them and kick the crap out of each other was just pretty awesome, I gotta say.
Now, some people might not think about the fight scenes, since that's what they're actually playing, as being something that you have to write. But how do you include those and decide, you know, how the story is going to progress through those playable sections?
You're talking about when the player plays the fight?
Right. When the player plays the fight, you're choosing, you know, how to progress.
One of the things about that I always, you know, I think it's an unwritten, credited thing that the guys bringing the story do is, you know, I'm always coming back to them and saying, you know, we got to fight as Batman, against Batman, as Superman, against Superman. Got to fight every character, you know, as evenly as possible. So this is ridiculous amount of restrictions that are put on the guys, and they got to write a story around. So, you know, a lot of times they're facing the fact that, you know, why do we got to make Aquaman fight against Shazam? And you just have to. And then so they'll write something, and you know, so a lot of the stuff is ad lib, and so I'm just always amazed at the end of the game, you know, with all these gameplay restrictions that we put on them, that they make a cohesive, you know, entertaining story. But that's the kind of restrictions that are put on. It's all gameplay related.
Well, let me follow that up with you, Ed, and ask you why you felt like there needed to be a good, solid story to this game.
This game is actually the third game that we've done a story this. The first one was Mortal Kombat versus DC. And then we did the Mortal Kombat reboot in 2011. And in each one, each version, we get more and more sophisticated with, and longer with the story presentation. And we've always felt that, fighting games have never had a really good story. And so as we get more and more sophisticated, this was the one that we decided, okay, let's make this just the most, the biggest epic scale adventure. And it's just very important to us. Very important that we have fighting games with some kind of a story behind it.
You guys actually used some movie magic here. Basically, you produced a full-length DC animated movie and then put the fight scenes in that people got to play. Talk a little bit about that movie magic and doing the mocap and doing the sound recording and working with all of these talented actors.
Yeah, sure. It's an incredibly involved process. We're essentially, it was an hour and 50 minutes, so yeah, we're making an animated feature in less than 18 months. We have a process where, of course, we start with the script, we go through storyboards, we do 3D pre-visualization of our scenes, and then block all that out with our motion capture talent. But part of that process also is working with the great voiceover actors that we use as well. And we were fortunate to have a lot of the great DC talent that was available that came on board and worked with us. Brian and myself went out to LA and spent a week out there with Kevin Conroy and Richard Epcar and Tara Strong and others, and it was just really great. But then making the scenes, we go into motion capture stage. I liken it. It's the same process that James Cameron used on Avatar, but I say it's like making one of his movies, but on their snack budget. We have to be much more careful about how we spend money. We actually have Steve Scalabrino, who was our motion capture Superman, here today with us, which I pointed out. But beyond, once we get that, we have a very large team of people that work on it, both internally and externally, and they all work very hard for many, many months to get it where it needs to be and make it feel like it's part of the DC canon.
What was it like when you found out that you were writing words for Kevin Conroy and all of these amazing, famous DC actors that were coming back for this game?
It was very exciting, but then also it was incredibly pressure-filled because DC has such a great tradition in the animated feature world, as well as the work that's now happening in the live action. And, there's a very high standard, and the fans are going to be picky, and we just wanted to make sure that everybody was happy with it. So.
Now, of course, we can't have an Ed Boon game without a solid arcade version as well. And the arcade version has some very unique endings in there that you worked more directly on, right, Jimmy?
Yeah, well, again, we just, as consultants, we would get what the guys had, planned for it, and we'd look at it and just, again, check tone, make sure it makes sense and stuff like that. And it was pretty, again, for us, it was an easy gig because this was a crew that came in knowing everything, which is unique, by the way. When you work outside comics, you're usually like, no, Wonder Woman doesn't wear a hat. But this crew not only knew the material, but they actually were like, you can't do that with this power and that and this and that. So that was pretty cool, And again, actually every level, every time you play it is a unique experience. And like I said, this game goes, I think, above and beyond what me and Justin actually sat around imagining it would be. The final product blew us away. Again, like I could just keep saying that all day. It's just.
So let's talk a little bit about the individual characters, like Hatless Wonder Woman. Steve, when you're thinking about these characters, these very iconic characters, and you're thinking about how you're going to put your own twist on them, what's that process like? And when you're going down this list of...
Sure. It's pretty intimidating at first. It's like these are iconic characters, and fans are very dedicated to these very established characters, and it's kind of daunting at first, but luckily we have a really, really talented concept team at NetherRealm, and very productive. They here's 50 Superman, and then they review them with at 9, kind of like make this less metallic, and trying to pick out pieces that we like, and then we narrow that down to maybe 4 or 5 costumes, and then kind of do a lot of mixing and matching. It's like, okay, we like like this belt from Batman, we'd like these boots, and kind of make like this ultimate concept here. Didn't even know it was running. But then we narrow it down to like, a couple, then show them to DC, and we kind of talk about the details. And DC was, great this entire game of letting us, experiment quite a bit. Here's just a wireframe. Once we get the concept nailed down, we hand it off to our character guys, and they do these really high polygon, ZBrush models. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but this is an example of that. And we finally submit a detailed turnaround to DC, and they've been, really happy with our character designs overall. It was fun designing them because, you're, for the most part, I think we kind of stayed somewhat more traditional with more of the primary costumes, the costumes that you select, just from the normal player select. And then for the alt universe, we got to push the limits a little bit more of making them more of just pushing the design a little bit more, adding some armor elements, maybe making the regime characters a little bit more militant looking, and that's it's a long process.
What about the character selection process, guys? Obviously, you have your big Justice Leaguers that have to be there, and we know that. But then you kind of throw some wrenches in there. You've got guys like Ares. You've got Killer Frost was probably a surprise to a lot of people. What was that initial process like? How big of a list did you start with before you whittled it down?
Obviously the story has a lot to do with it, but I think our first thing was we weren't going to have a DC game without Superman, Batman, Flash, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, the top tier characters. But then, with regards to, gameplay and a part of it, we knew we wanted to have what was called power characters, the characters that can pick up a car and do all the kind of, insane stuff. And then the gadget characters who a little bit more agile, jumping over. We wanted to represent that. We wanted to represent, enough female characters. And then the story as well. There's certain characters that are just kind of mixed in a little bit better with the story. That kind of covered the first maybe 20 or something, 18 to 20 out of them. And then after that, it's basically, conversations where whoever yells the loudest gets their character, people pushing for, certain characters.
Whose last name is Boone?
Yeah. And so there were certainly characters that I would have liked to have had in it that didn't make it. So, but it is a very a lot of conversations happen. Some of them a little bit louder.
All right, well, one of the other big characters in the DC universe that gets sometimes overlooked is the locations themselves. Gotham City and Metropolis and Arkham Asylum. These are really characters in themselves. What was the process for choosing those locations and doing those, designing these places that everybody feels like they already live?
I think a lot of it, again, is a story. Maybe when you guys can go to that.
In this case, when we had a lot of flexibility in terms of writing the stories. When we got to the outline stage, that's where we knew where everything was basically going to take place, and then we had to pitch that to Ed and Steve to make sure everybody was on board with using those particular locations for the game.
And how important was it making the multi-tiered levels again, and having these locations have extra rooms and these big outside transitions and everything like that?
Yeah, that was a big part of it too, was the transitions. We wanted to, I don't think you can pick a more, enthusiastic DC crowd than our team for doing it. There's so many nods that we had when you knock somebody into the criminal room in Arkham, and you see all these guest stars coming in, and we really wanted to throw as much of that stuff at people as possible. And so there are just tons of kind of nods that when you go into the Clash, the two guys talk. I really wanted to take a moment here to also single out a couple people here. When we say our story guys, the guys who write the story, our lead graphics engineer is one of our writers. His name is John Greenberg, right our audio guys is also a writer. His name is Brian Shard, right here. So, like, I don't know if you noticed when you clash, sometimes the characters, they actually talk to each other, you know. So, like, if you see Grundy and Green Arrow, you know, they actually have dialogue that's come, you know, written, and they're like, I think 4,000 lines written just between the two characters, and that Brian wrote those, and so that was a pretty painstaking process. Way back in the day, in 1991, I started working with a guy named John Vogel, and have been working with him ever since. He's right there. He's one of our, he's been on the team as well, story writer. So, you know, we're very, you know, it's there's a lot of cross kind of pollination of disciplines and whatnot, but you know, that's the kind of like enthusiasm. Everybody reads these comic books, you know, everybody has, you know, an opinion, and it just makes for a better game when we do something like that.
Hector, can you talk a little bit about the interactivity in the background? I think people probably have a lot of fun with that, getting to pull things off the ceiling and throw them at their opponents, and shooting their opponents back into Aquaman's throne and things like that. Talk a little bit about that and how you guys decided to...
Yeah, it's to me that's one of the things that sets Injustice apart from other fighting games. I mean, aside from the fact that it's probably one of the coolest DC games that have been made. You know, DC hasn't really had a true fighting game for a really long time, and I think it was the responsibility of our studio to try to put that together and use our pedigree to kind of give these characters that arena to go have these fights. You know, who would win in a fight between Superman and the Flash if it really came down to it? And to go along with that, we wanted the scale of the fights to be really epic, really huge. And one of the ways we were able to do that was with these kind of like multi-tiered environments. And you know, if Superman and Batman were fighting in this room, it's not like they would just be fighting in this aisle and nothing would be affected, right? You know, they'd be grabbing stuff, they'd be throwing things out there. You know, the place would kind of collapse upon itself, and I think, you know, everybody in the studio realized that that was kind of a big thing that we wanted to have in the game, to have this like background damage, to have, you know, it looked like there was this epic fight. And one of the gameplay things that Ed really wanted to push, you know, he pushes us every game to kind of evolve the gameplay a little bit, and adding these interactive objects, which is almost kind of an extra special move for each character to go to kind of balance in the fight, was one of the things that they identified early on for us to kind of like pursue and get that in there. So I think that was a true testament to kind of the design team and the gameplay programming team to try to make them feel functional and make them kind of like work out really, really well. If you're in Metropolis, what are the objects that you would use? You would use a flying car, you would use an APC, things like that. I know Steve's guys had a lot of good ideas for that stuff.
One of the biggest challenges throughout the whole game was designing elements that make sense for the environment. You can't just like put rocks everywhere or anything. It's like you have to make, you know, there's objects that need to make sense, and the gadget characters have to interact, you know, just as well.
As the game has been played online for the past like few weeks, and we've been seeing, you know, all of you guys that have been playing the game, we see people have their favorites. They have like a strategy. You know, when you start the fight, you almost have a battle plan in your head. All right, I'm gonna grab this thing. I'm gonna throw this thing at him. I'm gonna jump off this and knock him into it. And it's just so cool to kind of see that in a fighting game that hasn't been done before. And that's totally like, you know, that was like from Ed and like the guys when they had the initial vision to kind of get that out there.
Steve, you just mentioned the gadget characters. You've got the gadget characters and the power characters. How did you guys make those really feel distinct, and why was it important to you?
Yeah, it's like, obviously, it's like, how do you make, you know, Joker be able to, you know, pull off these big moves, just, you know, that he has to share the same interactivity as, you know, the big guys. So, you know, there's a lot of bombs going off, and you know, quite often we just design a bunch of potential interactable objects and kind of polishes them and makes sense of all the nonsense that we kind of just throw out. And there's a lot that I'm really happy that got in, like the Starros were kind of, Starro was kind of like the last minute addition, and just little things that I really liked from day one that kind of snuck in there. And even some of the potential wackier items, I think get a really big reaction out of people. Like the pig is a good one in Arkham City. I'm sorry, in Arkham Asylum. It's just a fun interactable that I'm happy that got in.
Can you guys talk a little bit about continuing with the gameplay here? This obviously has a different controller scheme than we've seen from you guys before. You took some big risks and really kind of jumped away from the Mortal Kombat formula a little bit. What were some of those risks that you took, and how early on did you feel like you needed to make those changes for a DC game?
Well, I guess a lot of we have this kind of like comfort zone. We've been working on Mortal Kombat for 20 years, so we're used to having a block button, we're used to having fatalities, we're used to having, more recently X-rays. And, our design team, they really wanted to, make some pretty radical changes. And so, the whole concept of getting rid of the block button to kind of simplify the controllers, this power button where every character has their own unique feature. These are things that, honestly, some people came in my office and, knocking on, are we sure we want to get rid of the block button? I'm kind of used to that. And so, as that's early on, but then after a while, as people were playing this game, we wanted to give it its own identity. I guess, Hector, I don't know if you want to speak to that too.
I think, one of the goals in this game is that we knew that we were going to get new players into our genre. The fighting game genre is obviously where we've made our bread and butter, we've made our name over the years, but having a DC game, having a game where Joker's on the front of the box, Batman, Superman on the front of the box, we were going to get people playing the game that might not have the wherewithal to understand all this stuff. So one of the main components for the designers was to kind of make it a little bit easier and simpler to do some of the bigger events, so that when you play the game, you're really having a good time. The interact button being, on one button, it's not like a special move input. It's literally, hey, you walk up next to a car, you hit the button, you can slam it on the guy. Just doing that, you're not going to win. Obviously, the strategy isn't just run to the thing and try to throw as much stuff as possible. But if you're playing with like your little cousin or something like that, they can do it and they can experience it. The super move's another thing. You hit the 2 trigger buttons, which is a very iterative kind of like gameplay thing, to have this big kind of cinema where Superman is punching somebody into outer space. So I think that was kind of like the main influence for kind of simplifying the controls, because we knew there was going to be a whole bunch. I mean, how many people here have never played fighting games before but are playing Injustice now? Like, there's a lot of people that are doing that. So for us, that was what we wanted to do. We wanted to get people in and kind of like play the game that way and make it a little bit easier and get away from MK's kind of like traditional stuff, because Injustice is its own thing.
Well, you just brought up super moves, so why don't we show our video featuring the super moves here real quick, and then we're going to chat about this a little bit.
Actually, this is kind of shows you the progression of the super move. Aquaman is like a lot of people's favorite super move, Bring the guy into, so you see it in its kind of raw form. It's just, just the animation, no backgrounds, no audio, no effects, So it goes through a number of iterations. You'd be surprised how these things start with literally sometimes a stick figure drawing, and then you see the final version here, which has all the big cool, the tidal wave comes in, all the fish going by, he stabs them, the shark's a lot more dramatic, he goes towards the camera. So, it gives you an idea of some of the, the collaborative stuff. When you saw that thing without any, the most generic version without any camera, there's a whole cinematic group of guys who add cool cameras. And another shout out, Matt Gilmore over there. Matt, stand your ass up. Matt, all the cool effects that you see, the tidal wave, the blood, the big explosions when people are flying through it, he really adds life to it and kind of makes it feel that much more epic. And has been doing that, he did a lot of those gory X-ray moves that you see in Mortal Kombat, and so it really just kind of makes it a more visceral experience.
So Steve and Dominic, when you guys are working on developing these super moves, I imagine, Steve, sometimes maybe you sketch something out and you figure something out, and then Dominic is like, how the heck am I supposed to record that?
Sometimes Ed will, bring these stick figure concepts to us, and it's like, here it is, and it's like, good God, it's like, it's like, how are we going to do this? And there's always kind of this weird sinking feeling that it's like this huge effort that you have to fit in this short, amount of time, that it's always a good challenge, but it's been like scary at first, but we always have the wrangling of the minds of here's the cinematic guys, here's Matt and the effects guys, and the tech guys, and John, and managed to pull it all together. It's we have a ridiculously talented team, and again, like Ed said, like everyone had such a passion for doing a good DC game that we all wrangled together and get it done.
And I should put it, it's a parallel process. One of our cinematic leads, Josh Slingerland, is the person who's quarterbacking all of the super moves. I have my hands so full with story, there's no way I could even try to do both, and they just do an incredible job with it. So.
Very cool. Let's go down the line real quick here, starting with Ed. Favorite one? What's your favorite super move?
Super move, the shark one, for sure, without a doubt.
I hate to say it, the same one. I was laughing out loud for like 10 minutes when I saw that. I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I got to go with Aquaman. I think the first goal was Aquaman has unfortunately had a bad reputation, which is undeserved. And I think everybody went in and like, we're putting Aquaman in the game. He's got to be awesome. So they came with a super move, and then we have the sea monsters in the script, which you've probably seen, which made it into the comic, which I thought was awesome. And yeah, it's all about Aquaman.
Not going to say Aquaman. I'm going to have to say Superman, just because it was the first super move we did for the game, and kind of like hold it near and dear that we got that done, and it was kind of the benchmark for quite a while for the rest of the super moves.
Well, Steve stole mine because I was going to say Superman too, but so mine, I'll say that mine is one that you're going to see a little bit later, which is Lobo. I think that one knocks it out of the park. Well, we're gonna get to that in a little bit. Stick around.
Let's talk real quick just about the other ways that you guys kind of expanded on this game. You added in your Star Labs missions, and there are so damn many of them. What was the impetus behind that, and why did you feel like that needed to be there to open up more of gameplay returns?
The Star Labs mission is, it started off as like just a kind of continuation of the challenge tower from Mortal Kombat. The designers, and the guy who kind of like led the whole Star Labs effort is right here, Brian LeBaron. Stand up. And so they, they wanted to add an Angry Birds twist to it by adding the stars, and so that really added a lot of like depth to it, and some of the missions are just like insanely difficult, but that was the whole purpose of it, was to make something that had some really tough ones, some really easy ones, and it's a lot of content. It's got to be like 8 or 10 hours of just challenge after challenge, just over 240, 50.
And then you guys also have this mobile game for iOS that ties in. Talk a little bit about how it actually ties into the console game and the way you guys did that content sharing.
This is one of the coolest things about the whole Injustice project, and actually, I'm going to do the Ed thing. 2 of the guys here are super responsible for it. Aaron Piepergers is in the back. He was the lead producer on it. And Sean Hendrick, our studio head, is actually over here in the corner, and he's shy, guys. He's very shy guy. It's funny, 2 years ago, Sean's kind of thing is like he likes to give you very direct tasks, and one of his tasks at the beginning of the project to us was like, hey, here's an iPhone. You do something on the iPhone, something happens in the game, all right? If you're playing something in the game, something happens with the iPhone, and that was it. That was all the direction he gave us, go make it happen. Now, 2 years later, we have this amazing kind of like connected experience between the 2 things that is, it's really unbelievable. As a gamer myself, I'm not just saying it because I fly the colors. It's really, really cool. Stuff that you do on the console actually helps out things in the game. So if you guys haven't played the iOS game, it's a free-to-play game, and it's kind of like a card-based fighting game where you pick a team of 3 guys and you fight kind of up a ladder like the arcade style. Now, things that you do in both games have an effect on the kind of partner thing of it. So you can unlock exclusive console kind of costumes and skins for your characters by playing the iPhone game. So if you're not at home, you're on the bus on the way home, you can play the game, and when you get home, you have a new costume waiting for you because you did something. Like, to me, that's super cool. when you're playing the actual console game itself, if you're playing the Star Lab missions, or if you beat the story mode in the game, you unlock a super uber powerful character that actually makes the experience on the mobile device that much better. And the fact that these things are able to talk to each other, that these things understand that you've reached this level in this thing and you've unlocked this content, it's like dark magic to me. I get scared with the programmers when I see them, that they're able to kind of connect these two things. And I would really highly suggest everybody kind of like pick it up. It's free to play and it's doing really, really well. And it's an awesome experience.
How many people are playing the mobile game? All right, well, we're going to save a little time for the very end of this panel to reveal to you the main man, finally. But first, let's do a little fan Q&A time. We have a microphone right here in the middle aisle. People can line up right there. Feel free, ask questions about just about anything you want. We're going to let you know up front, we cannot answer any questions about DLC unrelated to Lobo. It's the only one we can talk about right now. Nobody ran off and sat back down, so that's good. Just telling you right away. Let's go for it.
Hi. First of all, awesome experience, so thank you very much. My question though is, are you guys going to be tweaking some of the online characters? Because there's a lot of people, and I'm sure you've seen, like that love to play Deathstroke or Black Adam.
I don't lose to Deathstroke, so I don't know what you guys are.
Yeah, one of the things we built into our game since Mortal Kombat is something that we call tweak varies, and basically we have variables in the game that we can adjust even after the game has been released. And with a fighting game, it's interesting. When you're testing a game and you have hundreds of people testing it, you get it to a certain level. But once hundreds becomes millions, certain things are going to surface that inevitably, you cannot predict. So we will be in a constant process of refining the game. Every DLC character will come along with these tweaks to the game that'll make it that much more balanced.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Jerome Green. I'd like to know, how did you guys come up with such a dark storyline? And just a second question, could you please sign my copy of Injustice? Please. I've been playing Mortal Kombat since I was like this year high.
Dominic, why'd you go so dark with the story?
Oh, I guess tonally, because we're known for Mortal Kombat, I think the consensus was we wanted to do something in the DC universe that sort of fit the existing brand for the studio. And then once we decided that Superman was going to be our boss and our villain, certainly one of the discussions we have with Jimmy and also the people at DC is that in order to take Superman to that place where he was going to snap, we had to really put him through the grinder in a way that we wouldn't have to do with some other characters to get him to that point. So, so all of that was designed to just make you understand why Superman could be a villain in this alternate storyline that we're telling.
Thank you.
Are you going to sign this copy?
No. I will.
Come by after the panel and we'll
How you doing today?
What you got?
You have produced a really great game. I would love to see, would you be, if it came forward that you could get the license for Marvel, would you decide to do a strictly to do actually good Marvel
The guy in
game?
the Batman shirt and the black and yellow pants is booing.
But would you ever be considered to actually do, if it was presented to you, to do a Marvel game strictly, like you have done Injustice, because you have produced a really excellent game. I would love to see you produce a good Marvel fighting game, actually.
Well, I think as pure comic book fans, I think obviously, we'd be lying if we said that we didn't like any Marvel characters or something like that. But the reality is Warner Brothers owns DC, Disney owns Marvel, and we all hate each other. from a fan standpoint, we would love to do it. It's
Right.
a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah, I know.
Do it in your head.
Yeah. And I have one last question, one last thing to ask. Could you sign my copy of Mortal Kombat? Could you sign my copy of Mortal Kombat?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
My name is Justin. I don't have a copy of the game to sign, but I do have Batman.
Don't ask for a copy.
I got some Batman Underoos to sign. If you guys can I just want to point out two things that I love: the crossover, the depth of the comic. I think that needs to be said. I love that the comic gave so much more depth to even the story of the game, so that was great. And also the soundtrack was amazing. I don't think that anybody listens to that opening menu music as much as I do. It's gonna be my wedding song. I just want to know, as one of the few people who actually enjoyed DC versus MK much more than probably I should have, I felt like this was like a big I'm sorry, almost. I mean, not an I'm sorry in the case that you guys did bad, but like with the Joker and with Superman, Batman, there were so many. It was so derivative of MK versus DC, but so much on another level. Were you guys consciously thinking about, we have to go bigger this time, we have to go bigger this time?
You know, MK versus DC, the reality is, you know, there's Mortal Kombat, which is, you know, crazy, bloody, over-the-top violence, rated M, you know, and then there's DC, which, you know, doesn't do that. And, you know, when you do a game that has both, you can't go 10 out of 10 on the Mortal Kombat side, you can't go 10 out of 10 on the DC side. So that, you know, this game basically just kind of it made it obvious to us that there was an opportunity to do a, you know, back to roots, pure Mortal Kombat game, which we did in 2011. Nobody's gonna applaud or? Thank you. And then there's, we knew we were gonna follow it up with a pure, you know, superhero, you know, epic celebration experience, and that's what this game is. And so we really, you know, that's why so much things have changed. And we didn't want to do the same thing. Everybody, from the very beginning, we said we want to do, you know, a dark game, you know, a game with over-the-top, you know, moves, and a kick-ass Aquaman. Those were our main goals.
Thank you, and I'll bring up my underoos afterwards. I'll be in line.
Hey guys, let's try to keep it to one question so we can get to as many people as possible before we show you Lobo.
Yeah, I don't need to ask you to sign anything because I met you on the show floor. But I was wondering, because there are exclusive costumes that you unlock by playing the mobile app, and the iPhone, it's only on iPhone right now, and it's been doing very well. For Android phone users like me, would there be because that Batman Beyond costume looks too cool to miss out on.
Yeah. That guy wants to be part of the show. To not directly answer that question, I will talk around it and you can infer what you want to infer out of it. You guys know our studio, you guys know the amount of kind of customer quality and kind of like the way we take your guys' needs and wants into consideration. So take from that what you will as well. But obviously if there's enough of a groundswell from the fans for something, NetherRealm usually does their best to deliver whatever it is that they want. So that's that's as far as we can answer that question for right now.
Cool, thank you.
Hi there. My friend wanted to ask, did PC win? Also, why no Martian Manhunter?
He's in there. He's in the back of the watchtower.
I know he's probably making Oreos and stuff, but I want to play as him, man.
Any PC plans, guys? Like again, it just goes back to the kind of like what I said before. If there's enough of a kind of desire from our community and from our fans for something, we will do our best to fulfill any and all needs.
Does anyone here want to play it on PC?
Alright then, there's an interest. You got 4 copies sold. As long as you promise not to download it illegally and pirate it.
You look like the kind of guy that would do that, so I don't
I confirm and deny nothing.
No, I'm totally kidding.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Last guy stole my question about the iOS game, so I'll just say my favorite super move is the Ares one, and I was just going to wonder when the DLC will be released, so you'll probably answer that later. So.
Something about that?
My question was about the online options in the game. When you're pairing up with someone, I love the interactivity of throwing a space car at someone, but at the same time, I'm very competitive with it. I've got corner, I need corner control. I turn off options, press start, press L1 to turn the options off. My map gets picked, they're still on. Is there any plans to fix that or to turn those off in online?
Yeah, that's not a bug. That's actually the design of the game. So because transitions are so powerful, both players have to decide to have them shut off. So if the other person also elected to have the transitions or interactive objects shut off, then the game would commence with both of them off. But because the balance of the game changes so tremendously, if you have them off, we didn't want to just have one person to have that power to say, hey, I want to play with them off, because the person on the other line might not, want to play that way, and they've incorporated that so much. So, my suggestion to you would be in our lobby room. There's always kind of a room that's like a transitions off room, and people that are in that room have transitions turned off. So you'll always be paired up with somebody who's decided to play that way if you want to do it. But when we balanced the game, we balanced it with transitions and interactive objects in mind. So that's the reason. So it's not a bug; it's an actual design feature.
Awesome. I love the game. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Hi, and I mean, I understand the reasoning for the not crossing DC and Marvel, but...
Oh God, here we go.
No. It's not a Marvel question. I was wondering, is there any future prospect of maybe doing a game based on some smaller DC-owned properties, like some Vertigo or Image characters like Watchmen, or maybe the Guardians of the Globe universe?
Well, Image is not DC. That's a completely separate company.
Oh, okay. Wasn't it owned by DC at some point?
No.
Oh, okay, never mind.
No, you're confused because of Jim Lee, who started Wildstorm at Image and then brought it over to DC.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But any deeper characters into the DCU that you guys would like to bring in?
I suppose there's an option, or the possibility of them making the roster if we were to do like a sequel or something like that. Obviously, the inevitable problem we had was, if we picked 25 characters, there's a lot more than 25 characters in the DC universe. We will inevitably let somebody down, but there's always hope for DLC, and there's always hope for a possible sequel or something.
Who wants a sequel? There you go. All right, we're going to do 2 more questions, and then we have to get to Lobo.
First, all I want to say is I haven't bought the game yet because I've been saving my money for this event. But one thing I love about the game is there's a very large cast of characters that are related to the Holy Trinity characters. And one thing I have to do kind of relate to his question about the Wildstorm. I looked some really low on the totem characters in DC, maybe Vi.
Well, we can't answer any questions about other DLC right now, but we do have a new character that we've announced called Lobo, who's actually pretty rarely seen in the DC universe. That is, we're going to show you off in just a couple minutes. All right, last question.
Hello. I'm not going to be the last question, but hey. I'm confused about all the Regime Nightwing hate. I'm one of the people that doesn't hate the Regime Nightwing, and I was just wondering, how did you go from regular Nightwing, as in Dick Grayson, to emo, Damian Wayne, long hair, red, acting all, badass?
Spoiler alert.
Sorry. I was
Are you
just
talking about
curious.
character design or?
Yeah, I was just curious because I don't get all the hate. I actually like Damian. I didn't think he was bad. Well, he was bad, but okay.
A lot of designs for him, and that's just the design we all, like the most. And
Yeah,
DC liked it a lot.
So we went with that.
Yeah, so I know I did hate it. I'm a big Tumblr person, and I went on Tumblr. It was just
This is the first that I've heard that somebody had anything negative to say about the game at all. So I'm surprised. I'm actually surprised about it.
But I don't hate him.
That's good. Thank you. Don't tear the universe open right now.
Well, I could sit here and I could tell you about Lobo and ask them all sorts of questions about it, but I think we should probably just watch that trailer first. Right? So here's Lobo, world premiere.
Time to liven up the joint. You're about to be croaked, loser.
Give it up one more time for the main man. All right, guys, let's talk real quick here about what it takes to make a DLC character, because I think people probably are just going, well, the game's done, so just give us like a new character every week. But what does it what does it take to what's the process behind that?
Well, there's, as with the game in general, there's always, it starts with the concept of the character model. Well, the selection of the character actually is probably the first one. But then there's the concepts that get drawn by our fantastic concept team. We model the 3D model for the, inside in the game. Then there's the animations. We go into the motion capture studio. Some people don't realize that we have arcade endings. When you finish the ladder, there's always a story that's told for the characters. So there's this whole, category of things: audio, effects, animations. There's just design. There's an entire, army of people working on these things. After we release the game, so it just goes on and on. QA keeps going. What am I missing? Anything?
No, the audio, just basically every single department all works on the character. The character doesn't get made without every single department in the studio touching it. You know, and then at the end, once we have all the pieces together, then we have our QA department, who are really kind of like, you know, unsung heroes of the studio. And our QA manager, Warren Wilkes, is in the back with his family in the back. So you know, we have a small army of like 20 to 30 people in the studio, and then another army in Canada that about 100 people that actually play the character and give us feedback, say, hey, his shotgun is too strong, or you know, this is too slow, and that kind of stuff. So, you know, once our team kind of internally puts all that stuff together, then we give it into players' hands to get the feedback, to kind of get back, to get everything out, and then we have to do, you know, the whole kind of submission process, and, you know, work with, I mean, it's amazing how many people touch it before it gets into your hands, but, you know, to see reactions like that we just see for that kind of stuff makes it all worth it. So if you see any of the guys here with these red Injustice development team shirts, those are guys on the teams, and if you like what you saw, you know, pat them on the back, and because they put in a lot of hard hours to get that stuff out there. So you guys want to know when you can get your logo? May 7th. A week from Tuesday, guys. 1 week from Tuesday.
Guys, thank you so much. Thank you guys so much. And, you know, I think what we need to do here to close this out, the best way to do it is to show that trailer one more time. We need to see that super move one more time.
Time to liven up the joint! You're about to be croaked, loser. They don't call me the main man for nothing.
Thank you guys so much. I want to thank Ed.